Hey friends, thanks for joining me, Jim Baroud, to hear a few insights from leaders who represent our innovation ecosystem. Today's chat is with Atul Sood, the co-founder and CEO of Kitchen United.
I just got promoted to CEO of a company I co-founded 6 years ago called Kitchen United. We're a leader, and we're the first company in the ghost kitchen space in the US. And It's been a lot of fun. I have been involved from the beginning. I was the first employee on payroll, and it is different but enjoyable being in the CEO seat. I've been in it for about 3 weeks, so thank you for reaching out to me. I'm glad to be here.
Well, congratulations, first and foremost. Now, I know you've had a really amazing career. So take us from, high school and how we got to today.
Sure. Well, I think amazing is the kind way to look at it. I've had a varied career for sure. I've had a lot of failure, right? And I think I am now poised for success. I hope I am, but I think part of the reason for that is because I've learned my lessons well. I've had a fairly nomadic existence. Pre-high school, I went to three different high schools. I started high school in Tokyo, moved to London for my junior year, moved to India, and actually did my junior year again and a senior year in India. Prior to that, I'd lived in, I guess, four countries, maybe five, mostly in East Asia. Lived in Saudi Arabia for 6 months in between junior and senior year as well, or junior and junior year. Came to college in the States, went to Penn. Big fan of Penn, but I know you live close to Princeton. I'm actually a bigger fan of Princeton. I think it's a fantastic university with the best undergraduate education in the country. I graduated with an engineering degree, but I was a remarkably poor engineer. I believe it was a 2.67 GPA from Penn. Because I was a failed engineer, went into investment banking and followed my Wharton friends there. Spent about a year in investment banking. Great experience. It was the dot-com boom. Moved from there to a hot technology company in Austin, Texas, called Trilogy. I was there for 5 years, from Trilogy being 1,200 people when I joined, 2,500 people at its peak, and then 150 people when I left. So I saw the rise and fall during the dot-com boom and then bust. That was a privileged experience to have that early in my career, particularly given that I stayed employed. I took kind of a sideways step. I moved into the Indian outsourcing world. My dad and mom live in India, and wanted to be able to spend more time with them. So joined a Indian outsourcing company that I led a product business at. So it was a services company. I led a product business, was there for a few years, went to be the first-time CEO at the age of 30 at a company that sold equity research to Wall Street banks. So I helped turn around that company, but then was hit by the financial crisis, and that kind of cratered the business, which was unfortunate because it was doing well. Had hit upon a business idea to meet prospects. So one thing I did to turn around that business was I was very good at selling. And the way I sold was using contextual data to meet my prospects at the right time. So for example, if you were quoted in the press, this is before Google News Alerts, I would call you up and say, hey, you were quoted saying you're leaving this bank to start your own. I'm the CEO of this company, and we can help you. Scale your equity research practice through our service offering. And it was contextual. It was timely. It was CEO to CEO, so it worked. Started a company that tracked an even more pointed trigger, we called those, which is where people were speaking and when, and sold a technology platform to track executives speaking across events across the world. We sold that company / shut it down. Too much detail to get into there, but that's when I had a pivot in my career into an industry segment that I just love. I have I generally have loved what I do because of who I work with. I'm a big people-oriented extrovert, but I love both what I do and who I work with today, because I'm in the hospitality industry, and people in the hospitality industry are generally, by nature, pretty hospitable. And I work in the restaurant industry. I joined McDonald's, which was honestly, it's the biggest restaurant in the world. I think it's one of the best brands in the world. I love the food. I still eat it. When I was there, I got 25 pounds heavier by eating it too much. And I led global food delivery platforms for the company for 2 years. I also led various venture relationships for them and worked on a couple of acquisition opportunities as well. That gave me exposure to the food delivery industry at its nascency in the US. DoorDash was just a few people. Uber Eats didn't even exist yet, right? So it was really the beginning of food delivery in the country, outside of pizza and Chinese, outside of the big cities. So that gave me the context to understand what was happening. As I did that and learned that, I believed there was a market for what are now called ghost kitchens. But I think that's a misnomer. I think the industry should be renamed. And I co-founded Kitchen United. Kitchen United serves restaurant brands that you've heard of. Think of Wingstop, or Portillo's, which is a recently public company, or Fresh Brothers Pizza if you're on the West Coast in LA. And we do so out of physical locations, primarily within grocery stores. We have a partnership with Kroger to serve their food for takeout, delivery, and catering. So you can order at a kiosk, you can order on DoorDash, or you can order through a catering provider like EasyCater. It is a company that's 6 years old. We have strong investors, including Google Ventures, Fidelity, Kroger is an investor, Circle K is an investor, and we are really optimistic about the future. The whole industry is kind of in a lull right now, and kind of in a reset mode. But as we reset, we are ambitious about the future. So that's the quick summary. I can go into detail on any of that that you'd like.
Well, let's start with the trilogy. I mean, that up and down, right? What did you learn from that, other than things that can go up, can go down? Any sort of highlights from that experience that seems sort of extraordinary and tragic?
Yeah, I learned that a CEO's job is a lonely one. I wasn't actually at the meeting that he called to lay off. I don't even know how many people it was, 500 people, 400, 600 people, hundreds of people, right? Young kids who had put their dreams and moved their houses to Austin, Texas to support the initiative that he had inspired them to support. And he had to lay off, hundreds of them. And I heard and heard it often that he cried during that meeting. And he had to take a tough decision to save the company, which was saved, has transformed, and is still alive. And that must have been lonely. That must have been difficult. It must be hard to disappoint so many people all at once. So I learned that. I learned that communication was critical. And I also learned that culture was critical. One of the most amazing things we have as now kind of mid-career adults is we have a foundation of culture amongst the alumni group at Trilogy that is really rock solid, right? People have gone on to really incredible things. I happen to be CEO now, but there have been people who've taken companies public. The CEO of Indeed.com is an ex-Trilogy guy. Home Away was founded by Trilogy people. Bazaar Voice down in Austin was founded by Trilogy people. There's this swell of population that has happened in Austin, Texas. And I think one of the big growth drivers is the fact that Joe Limont and other people at Trilogy recruited top flight talent down to that city back in the late 90s. And not only that, but I can't even count how many marriages happened from the Trilogy crowd, right? A friend of mine, Lauren Davis, was married to a guy named Mark, or Lauren Arbitier was married to a guy named Mark Davis. Scott Francis was married to Cindy Lowe. Their marriages, and the reason those early experiences were so formational for us is that the culture was solid. They recruited people not just for talent and brains, but for culture fit. And they built an amazing culture. And that's one of the things that I'm very proud of and glad that I was part of at such an early stage in my career, because it shaped my thinking of what a company could be. And look, we at the end of the day, I think people would say Trilogy failed. I mean, it's been reborn in a different way, but they would say Trilogy failed, and maybe. But I think Trilogy was immensely successful in creating this network of incredible people all over the country and the world that have stayed in touch and have an email listserv that still operates. And that's amazing, right? So if we can do that with Kitchen United and create an alumni base that goes on to be, leaders of various companies, public and private, that would be success for me.
And that's really interesting. Let's move on to McDonald's, right? We all know McDonald's. And obviously you had an inside look at that, fantastically successful company. In fact, I just saw a documentary about it, which is really, really interesting. Well, how have they, I don't, I eat there sometimes, but I don't get delivery from there. How have they done delivery, or how do they leverage the delivery sort of marketplace these days?
Well, it's changed. First of all, important hack is the hot mustard sauce at McDonald's is the best sauce they have. So you can put it on your filet of fish. That's my favorite meal at McDonald's. Delivery has not always, but delivery has been a big business for McDonald's, a multi-billion-dollar business for years, decades. And it has been so in primarily East Asia and the Middle East. India a little bit as well, but primarily East Asia and the Middle East. So when you think of McDonald's in, say, Korea, right? I don't know the exact percentage, but let's say it's 30% of revenue in Korea is delivery for McDonald's. You think of delivery of food, you think of McDonald's on par with Domino's Pizza in Korea or Singapore or Dubai. And I know that's unusual here, but it's not unusual there. In Singapore, McDonald's actually employs their own, they call them riders, delivery drivers on scooters that deliver food. And so it is an important part of the business model and has been for decades in certain markets. So when the US was going through its own evolution of delivery services, McDonald's wanted to lean in. Now, I believe that they chose the wrong strategy to lean in. I was not a supporter of the strategy, which was to do an exclusive with Uber Eats. I'd done a pilot with Postmates, at the time not owned by Uber Eats in New York. I'd done a pilot with a company called Favor in Toronto. And I was in negotiations with DoorDash. There was a leadership change, and the new leadership decided to do a global exclusive with Uber Eats because Uber Eats had the widest reach because of Uber. Now, that exclusive no longer exists. McDonald's is on every platform. And I think it delivered more value to Uber Eats than we received from it. Getting the support and endorsement of McDonald's, number one, from a brand perspective, number two, from a customer base perspective, is very meaningful. And I believe it helped in the proliferation of Uber Eats as what was then a new platform. So I was not a fan of the deal. That said, I think McDonald's is going to see an increasing percentage of revenue, even in the US market, from delivery. It is a key component of the growth strategy, I believe, that operates today. I'm 6 years removed from McDonald's. Most of the people I know have left. But I think it works, right? I think the next wave of innovation in that space is going to be in packaging. I have a friend who runs a company called Momentum Labs, and what I had trouble with at McDonald's was French fries. French fries just degrade. I don't know if you order much delivery, but if you order French fries, they likely come soggy, and that sucks. Nobody likes that. French fries are better when crisp. And McDonald's pushed back against French fry delivery, and I created a little hack. I won't get into it now, but that kept French fries crispy for almost double the amount of time. And I think as packaging innovates in the food delivery space, both with pizza, keeping pizza crisp and hot and fresh for longer, and with French fries and burgers and whatnot, I think it changes the economics of delivery because let's say the average Domino's driver or Pizza Hut driver goes out with 2 deliveries. If you get better packaging that keeps pizza crispier, then you can go out with 4 deliveries and you can be much more effective and efficient. So packaging is the next innovation in delivery.
Got it. Really interesting. Okay, so I'm sure you use some of those learnings for Kitchen United. Tell us what the vision is for Kitchen United. When are we going to unicorn status and an IPO, or where do we want to be? Where are you at now, and where do you want to be? Let's just say 3 and 5 years from now.
That's a great question, and I think I used to think of vision in terms of outcome, and I no longer do. I think it's the journey that matters, and I remember distinctly a dinner in New York with our executive team right at the beginning. And the CEO at the time, Jim Collins, who I admire and is a friend of mine, said, when he was asked the same question by one of our colleagues, he said, my dream is that 10 years from now, we're all sitting around the same table and we're celebrating that we've been in this business together for 10 years. And that didn't happen. Most of that leadership team has changed. I remain. I actually think I might be the only one who remains. But that's still my vision. Right? Like I would love to be running this business 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And I'd love to have the same team around me running it with me. And I'll tell you, look, I think there's a grand ambition for the outcome as well, whether that be unicorn status or IPO or really impact on the industry. But I'm a people-oriented person, and I would say the best outcome for the business would be what I heard at my second or third all-hands meeting that I ran here. We run an all-hands meeting almost every week, and we asked people about their first jobs. Okay, we're 35 people on the call. Asked people about their first jobs, and people shared about their first jobs and whatnot. And by the way, McDonald's is the first employer of more Americans than any other business. But they shared about their first jobs, and then 6 people out of 35 said, "But I hope this is my last job," right? And if this could be the last job for 15% of people at this company today, and 15% of people at this company in the future, that would be success. That really would. It would be success if this is their last job, right? If people, either because people can retire off the money they make, or because it's such a freaking good job that they want to stay in it for life.
Right. And how big is the company now, and what are your projections?
We have roughly 100 people across, it's changing, but across a dozen sites. We don't share revenues, but we're small. We are in 8 Krogers. Kroger is the largest grocer in the country. And that is really our go-forward strategy, to focus on grocery, retail, and convenience for our expansion. Places that generate their own foot traffic, where people want restaurant quality meals. So about 100 people. We work with dozens of brands, from Wingstop to Curry Up Now, which is a great brand. National, I think there should be a national Indian chain, and Curry Up Now I think is the best contender for that right now. So we work with a number of brands. We have a partnership that we'll be launching sometime this year with Circle K in convenience that I can't share too much about. And then we have other grocers, retailers, and convenience stores on the horizon as well.
Got it. And we've seen the rise of influencers, and we've seen Mr. Beast burgers. Let's just, in general, is this a way to launch do you have to be someone who has a huge audience to launch a brand successfully using a quote unquote ghost kitchen or something like Kitchen United?
I'd say you have to have good food. The first and most important thing about the restaurant industry is that your food better be damn good. And it better hold up. If you're going to do delivery, the food better hold up over the delivery time frame of 30 minutes. I would also argue that a successful operator doesn't just focus on delivery, but focuses equally on catering and takeout. You need all three legs of the stool to make the stool stand. You need good understanding of digital marketing and brand creation, menu mix, potentially multiple menus mixed, right? One of the best brands in the space is called The Absolute Brands, which runs a restaurant called Doghouse. And they have multiple brands under Doghouse. So they have badass breakfast burritos. They have a wonderfully named brand called Bad Mother Clucker Chicken. And they cross-utilize ingredients across those brands out of the same kitchen. That works really well. You got to understand marketing. You got to understand food. You got to understand labor costs, and you got to then build your brand. So it starts from the ground up, not the brand. It doesn't start from the celebrity down. It starts from the brand up. Being a celebrity, if you are Gwyneth Paltrow and you're running Goop Kitchen, that's fantastic, right? She is very authentic to her brand. They serve fantastic food. They do a shocking amount of revenue out of each store, and it's aligned. But the food quality is good. So you got to align your identity if you're a celebrity or a burgeoning celebrity with the food and the marketing and the brand. There are other look, I think there's a huge opportunity. We're working on something with a partner company right now that I can't discuss too much, but there's a huge opportunity for, I would call, micro influencers, right? So yes, somebody like Mr. Beast has, I don't know, however many million followers, or Reese Witherspoon, or whoever it is, has millions and millions of followers, right? That's great. But most people have, most people like me have maybe, I've got this poetry account, I've got 101 followers. So I'm very excited about that. But most people who are influencers have between 5 and 20,000 followers. Now, if you have, say, 10,000 followers, they probably are pretty passionate about following you, right? Because they've found you and they follow you. So could you run your own brand? Could you put your own sauce on some food? Could you make your own sandwich at Fat Sal's in LA? Maybe, right? So there's some stuff we're doing there that I think is very compelling.
That's really interesting. And tell us about the rise of the industry, right? We all have heard of Travis, his ghost kitchens, right? Is that the biggest player?
Cloud Kitchens,
okay.
is Travis. There has been, I would say, a lot of capital poured into this industry. We've raised 100 million, which pales in comparison to Reef, which is another competitor in the space, backed by SoftBank, and Cloud, which is backed by Travis, and run by Travis. They've raised, I don't know exactly how much, but say they've raised about $1 billion each. So 100 million from us versus $1 billion from them. That is an immense amount of money. Wonder has raised, I think, almost $1 billion as well. Just tremendous money. And a lot of them and us have spent that money. And that happens in first wave companies, right? If you remember how much money Webvan spent, I mean, it was a ton of money. And then Webvan ultimately failed. So I think the story is still being written about who will be successful and who will be not successful. We've seen some high profile kind of unsuccessful stories lately as the industry resets. So the story is still being written. What I would say is scale now is not indicative of scale later. It is just indicative of a point in time. And this is a marathon. It's the restaurant industry. It's not going anywhere. And it's taken hundreds of years to get where it is. So Kitchen United is 6 years in. Travis bought Cloud about 5.5 years ago. Reef, I don't know how old Reef is, but it used to be Park Jockey, which is a parking lot company. So they rebranded as Reef, I would say about 5 years ago. And then there's a second wave of companies. There's a company called Chef Suite, which is doing really well. Nimbus Kitchens, which is doing really well. Quick Kitch, which hasn't launched yet. There's a second wave of companies, as there should be, right? Like V1 companies will define the space, innovate, and try, and several V1 companies will fail. And V2 companies will pick up the learnings of the V1 failures, and they will innovate further, more cost effectively, more youthful entrepreneurs, I would say, who can learn from the mistakes of their more seasoned counterparts in other companies and be hungrier and quicker and nimbler and more capital efficient, and then grow. I think I genuinely think we will be the leader in the space in the long run. I think it's a global space. There's a company called Kitchen Hub in Toronto, which is doing really well. There's a company called Katopi in Dubai, which is already a unicorn backed by SoftBank. There's a company called Rebel Foods in India, which is doing well. This is a global play. Everybody eats, and everybody is going to do delivery as well.
What is the fundamental key to success or value proposition from your perspective of these types of kitchens?
It is meeting customer need. Customers have a need state, which is relatively predictable, which is at breakfast, lunch, and dinner, they're hungry. It is less predictable how hungry they will be late at night or at snack times. And when they have that need state, if they are not just a single person, they want a variety of options. Even if they're a single person, they want a variety of options. You're not going to eat McDonald's. As much as I love it, I don't eat McDonald's 3 times a day, or 3 times a week anymore. Maybe 3 times a month. Probably 3 times a month. I love McDonald's, man. I just love it. Anyway, the need state is for variety. And that variety need state gets compounded if you are more than one person. So I don't know if you have kids. I do. I'm divorced. When I have my kids who are 14 and 11, sometimes my kids want Shake Shack and I want Chinese. And in a standard delivery order, we cannot do that. The Chinese would have to come from one store, and the Shake Shack would have to come through another driver from another store. In a ghost kitchen facility, you can actually do that all at the same time. So you can cross order for multiple concepts. And that is a novel value proposition to the end customer that is really useful. Further, there's a value proposition to the restaurant operator. So in our Kroger's, we have sites that are ready to go. Permitting takes about 30 days. And if a restaurant wants to expand their footprint and go into a Kroger, we just had Wingstop open in a Kroger in Westwood in LA. And it took them a little longer, 60 days, but there was some details there. If a restaurant wants to open and serve a college campus market, we're right on the border of UCLA, they can do that in 30 to 60 days. And they can do it with limited to no CapEx. I mean, Wingstop brings in their own equipment, but they're not building a brick and mortar, right? So your CapEx for a brick and mortar is, say, $700 to $1 million. Your CapEx for the equipment is, say, $60,000. You can get going in 60 days, 30 days. You can reduce your labor costs by just having 2 people and not having a front of house manager. I mean, that's a humongous value proposition for restaurant brands. Just amazing. So it serves the restaurant, serves the consumer. It even serves the delivery driver, because there are multiple restaurants in the same location. After dropping off food, one of the challenges, I've been a DoorDash driver, one of the challenges is you don't know where to go next to pick up your next order. So in our case, because there's so many orders flowing through our platform, the driver just circles back and picks up more orders. So it serves the delivery driver. It serves, it serves us. It serves our partners. So there are a number of reasons for this model to stick around in the way that we're doing it, right? In the way that others are doing it, it is possibly less appealing. We believe in having some seating available. We believe in a hybrid model across delivery, catering, and takeout. We believe in a hybrid approach to offering variety of cuisine. So I think we're doing it right. And I think some of the others could learn from us.
Wow, that's fascinating. And what about delivery? Is the prospect of drone delivery, exciting? Because I know I spoke to an expert recently, and the cost to deliver via drone is considerably less once it gets penetration. Is that a possibility, or is that so far off?
Yeah, when I was at McDonald's, I worked with a team of people from Google X at the time. The division is now called Google Wing, which is air drone delivery of food, grocery, convenience. The FAA obviously has a hand to play in that. I think Arizona, Phoenix in particular, is licensed for that right now from the FAA, maybe other pockets around the country. New Zealand seems to be doing the most aggressive move on that front, Australia next, and then I believe Ireland is pretty advanced as well. Yes, drone delivery will be a thing, particularly in suburban areas. Urban drone delivery, I don't necessarily see that happening from an air drone perspective. On the urban side, the land drone, sidewalk robots, I think will be a thing. They already are in LA. Serve Robotics is a fantastic company that is doing robot deliveries from convenience stores and restaurants in the LA market and in the Bay Area, as well as other markets. There are other players as well. Starship, CocoBot, KiwiBot. This is a thing, and I think land drones, so sidewalk robots, will grow first. Air drones will come in major metro markets for suburban needs. So think of whatever the Chicago market for wherever the University of Chicago is. I forget the name. So that, or San Francisco market for San Bruno or San Ramon, right? So not actually in San Francisco, but in that market. And it will be a thing, but it's also will be a thing for the last 8 years. So I think we're on the verge of it now.
Cool. That'll be really exciting to watch. All right. So we've gone through sort of the industry. The future is hopeful here. And you mentioned before that you don't like the word ghost kitchens. And can you explain that or what you meant by that?
Yeah, they're not ghost. I mean, they're the way we do it, it's not ghost. The way other people do it, it is ghost. So ghost implies that it is secretive in some way. The other word is dark, right? It is secretive in some way. It is down a back alley. Nobody really wants to know where the food is coming from or who's cooking it. It is shady, right? And we're the reverse. We're front and center. You walk into a Kroger, you see a Starbucks on the left, you see a Kitchen United mixed food hall on the right. And we're rebranding to mixed food hall, by the way, from a consumer-facing standpoint. But you see a mixed food hall on the right. You can look into the kitchen. You can actually see it. You can see the food being prepared. So why should that be called a ghost kitchen? Maybe a virtual food hall, but it's not even that virtual, right? You can walk up and order on a kiosk. So digital food hall, right? Digital forward food hall. I don't know. Digital food hall is probably the best thing I've come up with because the food hall aspect of it is important. The digital aspect of it, we are digitally native. We are digitally native restaurants now. We really are. We have our own tech stack, and it's digitally native. So digital food hall is I think a much better term. Ghost kitchens are it's a dated term. I had a LinkedIn post about this or a comment about this on somebody else's post where I'm urging the press, and they're great writers in the space from, Lisa Jennings to, well, they're great writers in the space. Tom Kaiser is one of the best at Food on Demand. It's a niche publication, but if anybody's interested in the restaurant industry, they should follow it. But it's a dated term, and the term needs to change. It does not apply to what most of the industry does now.
Got it. One quick follow-up question. Is the menu minimized for these kitchens, or is it just as elaborate as a normal restaurant?
It should be minimized. In many cases, it is just as elaborate, but it should be minimized. 80% of the revenue comes from 20% of the product. And so if you're launching a brand, absolutely minimize the revenue, the menu, right? Like In-N-Out Burger's got it right. Minimize your menu, maximize your revenue.
Got it. And speaking of burgers, what do you order as someone who used to work at McDonald's? What is your favorite meal from McDonald's?
McDonald's, my favorite meal, I get greedy when I'm there, is a double cheeseburger, plain, and then a filet of fish with hot mustard sauce, medium fries, and a Diet Coke. I don't know. One of the things that I'm trying to figure out, I just had this conversation yesterday, so it's top of mind. I don't know why McDonald's doesn't serve Coke Zero. It feels like, I mean, McDonald's is the largest customer in the world for Coca-Cola. It feels like they should be able to serve Coke Zero, and I don't understand why they don't. They maybe in certain locations they have one of those new Coke machine things. They're not that new anymore, but you go into a BurgerFi, and BurgerFi is a great brand as well. But you go into a BurgerFi and you have Coke Zero. There's so many restaurants you go into where you have Coke Zero. Why does McDonald's not have Coke Zero? Yeah, I should probably Google that. Maybe I'll post about it on LinkedIn. Exactly. It bothers me.
Obviously. And, you know, speaking of LinkedIn, I know I was reading through your profile and you mentioned something about the importance of relationships and friendships. Can you talk about that? How you see, you know, as a leader in your industry, and someone who has a varied career, as you mentioned. Talk to us more about that.
Yeah, well, I would say friendships have mattered to me well before I was a leader in my industry or a leader of any company or even a follower of any company, right? Like friendships have mattered most to me since I was a young child. I have the fortune and the misfortune, according to my therapist, of growing up in 7 countries around the world, of living in 6 cities here in the US, of never living in the same home for more than 5 years, right? Fortune because I've met a lot of people and seen a lot of sites. Misfortune because I have limited roots, right? The house that feels most like home to me is in LA at my aunt's, my mother's sister in Brentwood, where I've been coming for 40 years. That's home, right? And that is a home that I've lived in for probably less than a year. So that tells you about how rooted I am. But to me, that's been fortunate because it has helped nurture my natural instinct to be an extrovert, to tune myself to make friends quickly, right? We haven't been in touch in over a decade, but I view you as a friend and you called me to speak on this thing, and I'm grateful for that. I believe in friendship happening instantaneously. There's this great quote that Sean Walchef, who's got a great podcast called Restaurant Influencers, which was my first podcast after taking over this position. This is my second, that he told me from the great philosopher. He said, whenever you quote this quote it from the great philosopher Winnie the Pooh. The quote is, "We will be friends for life. Just you wait and see." And I go through, the reason I sparked that quote from him is because my mantra has been to assume friendship. Generally, when I meet somebody, I assume they're going to be my friend. And I think out of pure goodwill that when I'm friendly to people, they tend to be friendly back to me. Now, it is a very rare case where people don't return friendship with friendship. And when they don't, or when there's something that they do that violates trust or violates human decency, or, you know, when something as little sometimes as they're super rude to a waiter, then I have an indication that maybe I don't want to be friends with this person. But in more than 90% of the cases I do, and I do a reasonably good job of keeping up with them. I send notes on LinkedIn or Facebook or emails or texts of memes or a poem every so often or whatever it might be. But friendship matters most. There's this book I'm listening to on audio tape called Outlive by Dr. Atia. And sorry, I'll answer my next questions more briefly. It's called Outlive, and it says 3 things to having a long health span and lifespan. 1 is nutrition, which is reduce your caloric intake. 2 is exercise, which is exercise every day. And 3 is emotional health. And emotional health is how many people give you love in your life. And I'm fortunate to have a lot of those.
That's really important, and I'm glad you mentioned that because, as you know, there's a loneliness epidemic, right? Especially with young men, and so the more we can encourage them and get them to have more relationships and friendships, the better, right? For all of us, for our longevity, as you mentioned there.
Mhm.
So this has been a really wonderful conversation, Atul. I want to thank you for it. Before we go, we usually do rapid fire, sort of just one things, and so I have a few of those. So let's get started. So just one thing, what tip would you give entrepreneurs who are thinking about launching a food related business?
I would say it's exciting to do so. It's an incredible industry to be part of. I'd say make sure the food is good. Test it. Make sure the food is good.
Got it. And what about how will AI affect the food and beverage industry?
In a number of ways. I think initially through voice ordering is probably the best application. Can't share too much about it, but there's a big QSR brand that has developed their own voice ordering technology, and it's fantastic, amazing. I tested it. I added tater tots, subtracted them, added sauces, said actually not that much sauce. It was amazing. So voice ordering is going to be the first aspect of it.
Got it. And what can we learn from Mr. Beast burger phenomenon and success?
It goes back to food. Be consistent with your food. Your food has to be authentically representative of your brand. It needs to be consistent. One of the reasons McDonald's has done what McDonald's did is because it was the same damn burger every single time, same damn fries, whether it was in Korea, Dubai, India. Well, India is different because of no beef, but Korea, Dubai, or Toronto, same taste. And that's why I love it. That's why we serve at, or they serve at McDonald's. 1 out of 8 people in the world eat McDonald's every day. I mean, it is shocking.
It is amazing, amazing. And lastly, we like to have our guests share a poem or a saying. What would you like to share with us today, Atul?
I do write poems every day, many a day. And I have a poetry Instagram account that I would encourage anybody listening to follow. It is Poetry by Atul, Poetry by Atul on Instagram. I wrote this morning, so I started off talking about failure. I wrote it at 4:37 a.m. I wake up early. I was dying a slow death in a far off place, much like the place I was in my mind. I was flying too close to the trees in a cold air balloon, and I could see the desert, but I could not find the oasis. I was low on fuel and self-confidence too, but I was high on the potential of life, even though life had been unkind. So I pulled that lever and ejected from the plane. I landed softly in the lush power of roses I had not seen from above, through the clouds and through the leaves and amidst the sands, and they surprised me with the tenderness of the petals and the fact that these roses had no thorns, but plenty of poetry within and a soft hue of tenderness that I felt under my skin and in my mind.
Oh my God. That's powerful. Thank you for sharing that. And I can't wait to start following you
Absolutely.
on Instagram. That's awesome. Poetry by Atul. Okay.
Please do.
We got it. This has been
Poetry by Atul. And read that. I read that because all too often I feel like, and I'll wrap, all too often I feel like podcasts or interviews or, documentary specials are all about successes. And, my brushes with failure have been frequent. And 6 months ago, I was in a very different place than I am today, for many reasons: health, relationships, work, finances. Very different place 6 months ago. And I have many friends, many, many friends who are struggling because of job loss or family loss or relationship loss, whatever it might be. And it's just around the corner, right? Like, it can be just around the corner. And it can go from a plane that is low on fuel to a land of roses and rainbows and unicorns. It really can. And it can happen. It might take a little bit of time, but at the same time, it happens overnight. I really believe that. And it is a mindset that there will be joy and there will be pain, and both coexist, and you just got to be at peace.
Thank you for sharing that background. That's really thoughtful, insightful, and thanks for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the show. Please like it, leave a review, and subscribe. See you soon.